And welcome back to Primetime Sports. I'm Randy Gardner alongside Ron Walker. Glad you could join us here tonight on the show.
It's good to be here.
First of all, tell us a little bit about what champions in sports means.
Okay, champions, I've concluded after doing about 6,000 games as a referee, it's all about attitude. If you want to be a champion as an athlete, as a coach, or even as a parent, you've got to have a great attitude.
And you talk about this attitude with coaches, parents, and everything. How does that, I guess, parlay into the youth as they grow up with this attitude?
Learning the right attitudes as you're participating in the midst of all that competition, if they don't develop a good attitude, it affects them even later on in life.
Now, talk to us about your experience. I've met you over at Forest Wood playing softball. Tell us about your background and how you got to where you are now. 22 years. Long time.
Yeah. I'm a 1971 U-City graduate, and I've refereed volleyball for 12 years, basketball for 20, and softball for 18 years. And also in high school, I played water polo and swimming, and I made All-American in water polo, which was quite an event. And I've had a great time participating in sports.
And you'll talk a little more about that a little later. It's a great story about the coach of your team that gave you some positive attitude to get you to where you made it.
Yep.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the program. What do you teach the kids?
Okay. As I said before, attitude is everything, and I give them how to have the right attitude toward the referees, toward their coaches, even toward their parents during this time where they're traveling them back and forth, and a lot of activity is happening. They're making a lot of choices. In the midst of all those choices, they've got to have a great attitude. So
kids are like sponges. They soak up everything, whether it's in the car on the way to or from a game. Any little thing a parent can say that's maybe negative can really influence a child.
I've concluded there's 4 responses that these kids make. Their anger comes out, revenge, or fear. And the 4th one is recognition, which I call and describe that as recognizing the situation and then making a positive response rather than a negative. And so if they're focusing on the right attitude, they're going to be having a positive result rather than a negative.
Now, you mentioned the other 3, the anger, the fear, and the revenge. Talk to us about those for the people who don't understand. What do those steps mean?
Okay. In the midst of competition, there's been a big emphasis on winning, which we're trying to do away with now, not focus on just winning only. But that emphasis on winning has brought about some ugly attitudes. The students so much as in taunting the other team when they make a basket, and so even high school sports, they had to make a new rule. There was no more taunting. And so this winning at all costs brings about the negative portion of participating in sports, and they lose all the fun out of it.
Now, you talk about this winning at all costs, but it almost seems like that's what our society has gone to. You see these multi-million-dollar players on TV. Everybody, as they start playing, they have that in their mind. That's going to be me. I'm not going to have to work. I'm going to make millions of dollars playing sports, but that's not the reality for 99.5% of the people.
Right. The percentage is about 300,000 college students that are participating, and only about less than 1% of them will ever make the pros. And so, but you see this attitude in the pros, just whatever it takes, they're going to do it to win that game. And they're not very good examples for the high school level, for the kids that see this. And so we're trying to change that around and realize that the kids can have fun. The majority of the kids are not going to make the pros. We want them to have fun later on in life so that they can participate in recreational leagues in the Parks and Rec.
And there's a very fine line. We talked off camera before we came on today about this, and telling a kid, hey, look, only 1% are going to make it to the pros, but don't give up on your dreams. But be realistic, you're probably not going to make it. How do you walk that tightrope?
Okay, well, first of all, it starts with the coach. Well, actually, let's back up a step. It starts at home. The parents have a big responsibility to teach the kids that they're special. Whether they win or lose, they're still special. And the coach, he's got to make the practices fun. He's got to have those times when they work hard and get ready for the game. It's got to be fun. And when game time comes about, the game's got to be fun. And if it's not, the percentages of kids dropping out, the number one thing that they portray, and it came out in a survey with the Athletic Footwear Association with 10,000 students talking about the subject of why did you drop out? Why did you participate in sports? And the number one reason they participated in sports was because it was fun. And the reason they dropped out, because they lost fun. They lost it. Somewhere along the line, coaches were not making it fun anymore.
You look at the coaches these days, whether it's, CYC or whatever, but a lot of coaches are just your average, ordinary parent who is out there coaching a team that has no coaching background. And I know there's clinics out there to teach them and get everybody on the same page, but it almost seems like some of these parents are trying to relive their youth, and they pass it on to these kids, and it starts at a very young age.
Yes. The parents, you can see them on the sidelines just cheering, and sometimes it's not always positive. And so after doing all these over 6,000 games as a referee, I realized that someone's got to get out there and teach the parents and the coaches to be positive toward the kids. And the kids respond very well to that when an adult teaches them and shows them the positive aspect of that sport. And they'll do great. Kids will do anything for you if you're positive toward them.
And that kind of portrays in the story you told me about yourself in the water polo, if you want to.
Yes. Sure. I remember swimming and playing water polo at U City, and I was ready to get out of the pool. I was starting in my freshman year, and I said to myself, what am I doing here? I am crazy. This is way too hard. And I remember my coach leaning over and sticking out his hand and talking to me and saying, Ron, you can do it. And so I just kept swimming more laps and more laps. And pretty soon, I did great. It was a lot of fun, with a good fellowship with the guys. And at the end of my senior year, Coach brought me into his office, and he says, I got something for you, Ron. And he handed me this plaque, and out of the United States, they picked 70 players for the All-American high school players, and I was picked as one of them. And so the reward was there at the end of the senior year.
And it just goes to show you, whether it's positive or negative, one statement can make a big difference in someone's life, basically.
Absolutely.
You hear these parents and coaches that might have one kid or two kids on the team that aren't up to par, and we'll talk about that in a second. And that's a big problem, when you're looking at coaching and being positive. One player maybe not up to the level someone else is, and someone, hey, you stink, you shouldn't be doing this. Mm-hmm. That stays with that kid.
Oh yeah, it's amazing how fast. As a matter of fact, on that survey, they said the most reasons for dropping out: I lost interest, I was not having fun, it took too much time, the coach was a poor teacher, I was tired of it. And so it was amazing that none of those were positive. And I began to think, I've got to get out there and show some positive aspects to teach the coaches and the parents that they can make a great influence to their kid. And later on in life, they're not going to remember the score of the games, but 20 years from now, they're going to remember the name of their coach that was such a great influence to them. And that's the positive part.
Now, let's say you're coaching a team and you do have maybe one or two kids on the team that are either far superior or far inferior. How do you go about coaching at a level to where everybody can have fun?
Okay. One of the things is the coach has to do is he recognizes the team and not just the stars. It's really easy to pay all attention to the good athletes, and all of a sudden the guys on the bench, they don't get their time. And so there's an organization that came up with these parts for the rights of the athlete, and I'll read them to you. One of the rights of an athlete is to have fun. Secondly, to learn skills. Thirdly, not to be torn apart for their mistakes. Fourthly, to be coached as a student and not as an adult. And number 5, to get to play their fair share. And I remember even playing myself. I got tired of it because I was on the bench and the coach wouldn't let any of the bench into the game. Even when we were winning by a whole lot, he still wouldn't put the bench in. So I want to get out there and show the coaches that if you're going to work hard during the practices and we're winning by a large amount, put the bench in. And that'd be great for the kids.
You talk about this positiveness and this upbeat attitude at the younger ages. Now we jump to the high school age where a coach has to look at it. This could be my job on the line if we don't win. How do you address that?
I believe there's too much emphasis, again, in our society of the win, 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 win. And if you don't win as a coach, we're going to replace you. Well, that's not very good. I believe we need to have stronger athletic directors that are going to be emphasizing attitude and teaching the kids character and not the winning process. And in the process of that, do away with the winning and win-loss record. That's not the emphasis. And the value is the character of the person. They have some responsibilities too as an athlete when they get there. They are to try their best at all times. And they are to give respect to the coaches. They are to be loyal to the school rules and to respect the rights of their teammates and respect the rights of that umpire or referee that gives the call. And not go away rolling their eyes or stomping the floor and throwing a fit. And here's where the anger comes back in. But accepting the call and moving on. If they're having the right attitude in the midst of competition, they're going to play well. Even if they lose, they're still going to play well.
And if you this direct pipeline here to the parents who not only yell at the players and the coaches, but physically abuse, vocally abuse an umpire or referee, the kids soak this up and take that. What would you say to those parents?
I would say to the parents to try your best to be positive. I remember a story of a parent. I was doing a basketball game and real loud in the whole gym. He goes, "Call it both ways." And so I did. I went over and gave him a technical. And 5 years later, he still remembers me giving him that technical, and he says, "Thanks for giving me. I was really out of order." And I said, "I know. You weren't being a positive influence to your kid." And so my goal and my mission is to get out to junior high and senior high schools and to even have parents show up to a seminar to where I can show them that, guys, you have a great influence on your son or daughter. How they're going to result for that season really starts at home. And when they come home, after they lost the game, don't so quickly jump into what went wrong, but take the positive aspect of that and say, "Hey, man, you played great. That one shot you made on the left side, that was a great shot." Find the positives and build on those.
Now, what about parentless practices and parentless games, which some organizations have actually gone to because the problem has gotten so bad?
The coaches, I believe, have to have a meeting at the beginning of the season. There's a lot of schools that aren't doing this, but I believe the parents should attend these meetings so that they know exactly what the coach's philosophy is, how he handles his practices, how he handles himself during a game when it starts, who he's going to put in, and how he's going to do his strategies. The whole gamut, the parents need to know exactly where the coach is at so that he can establish a trust, like parents, trust me with your son or daughter.
Now, to kind of throw a catch-22 in there, you talk about having meetings with the parents and the players and the coaches. Does all of that come together and almost take some of the fun out of it? Because fun, organized fun, would be just showing up and playing and having fun. Now you're putting the meetings and the parents have to understand, everybody on the same page. Do they kind of butt heads?
Not really. The kids know what's going on. and they want that positive influence. All the kids, I was walking in a mall one time, and as a referee and an umpire, I always try to be positive with the kids. And I was walking by in the mall one day, and I saw some of the kids, and I heard them talking, and they go, "Oh, there's my favorite ref." And wow, you know what that did to me? I go, I must be doing something right. So as a parent and as a coach, you cannot go wrong if you establish positive attitudes as they are participating in that sport. You cannot go wrong.
Is it hard to teach this program and be positive when everyone sees these guys in the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball that just act like complete idiots? I mean, it's almost contradictory.
Just about, yeah. We don't have the great examples, especially when a player spits in the umpire's face. That's not a good example. And the kids know that. The kids know that those aren't good examples. And if we emphasize to them that, hey, there's some good examples in the pros, but let's not keep our eyes focused on the negative part, but let's keep it focused on the positive.
Well, it's like life in general. You only hear about
Exactly.
the negative things. And I always ask everyone who comes on the show, and we talk about topics like this, do you think an incident like Terrell Owens pulling a Sharpie out of his sock, signing a ball on the field and throwing it up in the fans, is that almost a slap in the face?
Yes, exactly. They're human too, and I'm sure the coaches, they go nuts too when their players do things like that. And so I'm sure they're trying to develop even character, even when they get to that level in their later 20s and 30s. They're still trying to do the positive things. So
Now,
we can't degrade them totally.
Right. If you had a kid, let's say you're refereeing, and a kid does that in a game, what would you do to him?
Well, first of all, the coach and the parents know this. They have a set of guidelines. And once you have those guidelines down, the student knows if they step over that guideline. And so the kid probably is not going to do it, and if he does, then he will be disciplined. And not punished, but disciplined, and show them what the disciplinary action will be. A lot of times we have no disciplinary actions because we didn't put them in place. And if you have that at the beginning of the season, everybody knows exactly where they're going instead of wandering around when things happen like that.
As far as set rules, you know, there's different levels of competition out there. You've got some kids who just specialize in one sport, and that's their goal. What would you say to them and their parents about maybe spreading out and playing multiple sports?
I would not push any student to do, well, take my own kids. I swam all 4 years of high school, and I didn't really say anything to my kids. And all three of my kids swam on summer swim teams. They decided to do it. And still to this day, I have races with my kids 3 or 4 years ago, and they still haven't beat me yet. So maybe one of these days they're going to beat me when I get too old. But they had fun doing it. And so I didn't push them. And I don't think we should push the students.
If you had maybe one mission statement or one goal that you would want to portray to the youth and the parents and the coaches out there about sports in general, what would you want them to know?
Well, be positive. There was a game in Kansas State. The audience cheered, and the referee cheered, and the referee went and shook this girl's hand, and she had scored a goal at the foul line, and that was the end of the game. But even in the midst of all those cheers, they lost 83-1. But they had scored. And everybody cheered because they had scored. And my thing is to encourage and to inspire people to be positive, to say positive things coming out of their mouth. You know, to win the game is great. And to play the game is even greater. But to love the game and to have fun is the greatest.
And if you do all those, and especially the last one, you'll eventually reach your goal.
Yes, absolutely.
What about, as we wrap it up here, training? And, you know, you talk about the difference between athletics and academics. How would you, I guess, portray that level to a student? Because a lot of kids now put that athletic stuff above the academics.
They do have in schools where they recognize not only as a team, but the academics of the team. And they give those recognitions. So schools are emphasizing both. They're not just making those separate. They're emphasizing that the students, the ones who work hard in athletics, they're doing very well in their studies because they've learned those disciplines and they're having fun doing it. And when they're having fun doing it, it's going to be fun even in the academics.
And as we wrap it up, any last statements?
If you want to be a champion, a great champion, have a great attitude.